It is time to become holy. And it's not even Christmas, so I guess it's Christmas in July or Christmas in August more so. So yeah, new news stream. You know what that means? New news stream means new news. So we are gonna start off as usual with the very simple quality of life stuff before we get to the more juicy parts. And the quality of life stuff this time is the following. It's only small stuff this time. So now when you preview different levels of your character levels or your portrait levels or your special levels, it's more easy to check for very specific levels and the requirements for that level and what you get at this level. I'm not actually entirely certain what this really does, but apparently it's already live right now in the game, so that's cool. Next up, more importantly, if you now go to your labyrinth overview in your gallery, you have a list of all the labyrinths, and just looking at each labyrinth gives you like 10 gems once. So you know that when you go and you've gotten a new labyrinth that you've seen, you then go to your gallery in your chamber of light. And it's really annoying to have to go into each labyrinth, then go back out, and then go to the next one, and then go back out and go to the next one. And now you can actually just go between them, which also means you don't need to keep scrolling back and forth every single time. So it's a really small thing, but yeah, we kind of needed this at some point. Like at some point, we needed this to be in there, so it's easier to actually get the 10 gems for everything, especially if you're on a newer account that hasn't looked at all of these yet. So awesome. Next up, this was a small thing that I think only like a handful of players even knew about, or rather have encountered themselves. So it's this damage counter on the very right. That one only went up to like 10 million, or 10 million minus 1 to be exact, I think. So now it can also go above 10 million. Awesome, that's good. Yeah, now I can actually go above that. Like I said, not really many players were actually able to hit this, but we're pretty early in the game's life cycle, and the fact that we already had players hit this means that, yeah, maybe we needed to have this counter go a bit higher than just 10 million. Next up, and this is stuff that I'm gonna have to preface. Everything I'm gonna talk about right now, until some later stuff where I'm gonna specifically mention it, all of this stuff is going to be coming at the end of August, so in about 2 weeks, okay? So this is the first bit that's coming in 2 weeks, okay? This is so important. This is something that I've been not actively talking about, but that I've wanted in the game since its release, because we had to figure this stuff out ourselves, but now it's actually in the game. So when you take a look at a boss's info sheet, like for example, this is the Okashi no Macho, yeah, this is the Dessert Witch. So if you look at that, you have the different elements that you can see that the boss is weak to. You have the different resistances that the boss has, and you have the resistances of the ailments, like which ailments is the boss resistance to. And before, you couldn't see the numbers for that. You could only see that it is resistant to water, for example, but you didn't know how strongly is it resistant to water. Now we figured this out ourselves by just doing some maths, that on story there is no resistance. On battler it's like 10% or something. And then on Nightmare mode, it's like, and I think most other modes in the game, it's like 30%. And then some bosses in like Chaos, or I think some of the higher score attacks and higher towers as well, have like, specifically Chaos though, have even more resistance than 30% to the resistant elements. And as far as ailments are concerned, we assumed that ailments that are of the boss's weak element, for example, if the boss is weak to fire, then for example burn, because burn is the fire ailment, would have lower resistance. But if the boss was, for example, not weak to dark, then maybe curse would be more resistant because it's the dark element ailment. All the stuff we assumed. Some data miners had the answers, but most importantly, the important part is this was not in the game. And you really had to just either test it out or you had to just know. And now it's actually going to be in the game in 2 weeks from now. And I'm so happy that for every single boss you can check it now. And it also includes if there are changes with buffs and debuffs. So if the boss gets buffed or debuffed in any way and it changes the resistances, then it also shows up in here. Very important. That is really good. What else are they going to be putting into the game 2 weeks from now? The following. So I definitely mentioned basically every single tower stream that I did. I talked about, it's kind of sad that every single time you have to go up the entire tower, all the way from 1 all the way up to wherever you were. Now you can actually skip some. This is something that other gacha games do as well. Other gacha games that have similar amount of like monthly repeating content, like the Hoyo games, for example. Now you are able to skip some notes, and it works the following way. So it takes a look at how many stages have you cleared, and first it rounds down to the nearest maximum multiple of 10 below. For example, if you cleared 55, then the multiple of 10 that's below that is 50 in this case. So from 55, you just drop down to 50. And then you take that number and you subtract 10. And you get 40. That's what you get. So if you're at 30, there's already a multiple of 10, so you drop down by 10, you get 20. So, and that number tells you how many nodes next time you get to just skip. So if you've cleared fully, that means 55, which means drop to 50, minus 10, that's 40. Next time you do tower, you're going to automatically skip all the way to 40. Yeah, you just skip all the way to 40, and you automatically get all of the rewards up until then. So whenever the next tower drops, which will probably be in like 3 weeks, yeah, assuming like 3 weeks from now, whenever the next tower drops, you will just, if you've completed every single node right now, you'll start on node 40, you'll instantly get all 3 rewards up to and including 40, I think. And yeah, you can just continue from there. It's going to be much easier now to keep climbing. And then next tower is probably going to go all the way up to 60, which means that then you actually get to start at 50 the next time after that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, really nice. We finally got some stuff. Now this next stuff is, there's a lot of stuff to this. So even though this is also something that is coming in 2 weeks, and I have a lot of slides for this one because there's a lot of stuff here. The co-op content they've talked about. So they mentioned that they are aiming for this content to be released by fall or around that time, I think. They managed to do it before then. And the developers are pretty happy about that they actually managed to get it out before then, because things just went really well and they've put a crap ton of effort into this. They've said that they basically just had everyone on deck specifically for this game mode, because everyone apparently on the team as well really liked the idea behind this game mode. It was like, man, we just really want this game mode to be in the game, so let's work double time to make this happen, and they did. So this is coming in 2 weeks. It's a new co-op content, Link Raid. Doesn't have anything to do with Legend of Zelda, and yes, as it says, end of August 2025. So what is Link Raid? It works the following way. First off, even though it's co-op content, you can do this solo as well. You don't need to have friends or be in a union. Like, I don't have friends, but I'm in a union, and this is actually going to be helpful to you if you're in a union, but you don't have to be. So when you go into a Link battle, it works the following way. You can either join an already ongoing battle, or you can start your own. When you start your own, let's begin with that, you get put into a boss fight against whatever this current season's special boss is. In this case, it's the Sandbox Witch. So you start fighting the Sandbox Witch. And as you start fighting the Sandbox Witch, you'll of course deal damage to it. And that damage gets tallied up. It gets calculated, all of that damage at once, as you fight this boss. I assume you only have like a certain number of turns, like let's say 10 turns or whatever, to do as much damage as you can. And then that damage just gets dealt to the boss. Okay, so you're just trying to do as much damage as possible to the boss. Now you're probably not gonna be able to actually kill the boss in that time. So that's kind of weird. You can't actually kill the boss. So how does the boss actually get defeated? Well, this is where the co-op aspect comes in. When you start a battle, that battle will then be made available for other players as well. So they will see, oh, Razielem has just started a battle against this witch and has currently dealt like 1,000,000 damage to it or whatever. And you see on the very top left, you see a timer. This shows you how long you have in total across all players to defeat this witch. So now on the top right, you see other players, and you can see their icons that they've chosen. Other players have also entered the battle, and they've also dealt some damage to the boss. All of these people suck, by the way. They deal basically no damage. Come on, guys, do more damage than this. But yeah, they've all joined the battle, and they've dealt some damage, and all that battle gets then put onto the boss. Now, you don't actually see them, and this is the important part. You don't actually see other players fighting the boss. You only see your own battle. You can imagine that the boss is like surrounded by different teams, but you only ever see your own team fighting the boss. But there's like other teams as well also fighting the boss at the same time. So there's no direct interaction with other players. That said, they mentioned that this is only one type of multiplayer content that they have in store for the future. So that other multiplayer content that they've talked about is also going to be more union-centric. So that is still going to be in the future, sometime in or after fall. So still keep an eye out for that. But at least for this, you still basically play your own battle and you just try to do as much damage as possible. Then if you don't beat the boss, which you probably won't, because the boss is probably going to have a absolutely insane amount of HP, you then just have other players, as you can see, join the battle. So other players will be able to see an overview of like, hey, player 2 is fighting against Sandbox Witch right now, and you'll even see a little mark right here that says this player is actually in your union. And it says right here, yes, you can join random players' battles, and other random players can join you, but you can or rather you are prioritized to join players who are from your union, and there'll be bonuses for that as well. So this means that yes, you don't need to be in a union, but if you are in a union, you can sort of help each other out and give each other help, and that's really nice. Awesome. Now, what else is there? So I mentioned this about seasons. So there will be seasons. We don't know how long a season is. It might be 1 week, it might be more than 1 week, it might be a month, who knows. But basically every season there will be a different boss that you're fighting. And each season will have its own special buffs. Like for example, let's say in this season, Aqua characters deal 50% more damage and have 50% more breakage depletion or something. Like very simple stuff, but maybe they also go a bit crazy with saying like, oh, specifically follow-up attacks are gonna do more damage in this season or whatever. Just to spice things up so that you're incentivized to actually try and come up with different teams, right? Because it's a lot more interesting than just making a single team and then using that every single time. It's kind of boring. So yeah, they're trying to get you to like make different teams for this every single season. So that's pretty cool. Now, of course, there will be rewards. Tons and tons of rewards, really important stuff like pictures and key shards, and there's also going to be missions for gems, of course, and all kinds of, basically everything you can imagine is going to be in the rewards every single season. And on top of the season rewards, there are also daily rewards. So they know that players, if this was just all of the rewards in the shop, and you could get that immediately, the players would just immediately do all of the content and then complain there's nothing to do for the next month or whatever. So they're saying, oh, there's daily bonuses. So if you, for example, do 3 battles a day that you've started, specifically that you've started, then you could get a daily bonus. And if you belong to a union, you'll get additional daily bonuses. Ooh, interesting. And yeah, these are also just important items that you will need, like really important items, like more key shards. So yeah, once again, the game is getting you to do these every single day. You can help out other players, you can do your own battles, you can help random players or players from a union, and if you are in a union, more rewards. Awesome. Now it says this clear 3 battles you've triggered in a day to activate daily bonus. This still might change, and there might be other rewards as well for helping other players, because it feels kind of weird that they're only doing it for battles you've triggered, because that means that there wouldn't be any incentive to help other players. So there's probably always going to be bonuses for helping other players, I would assume. And as I mentioned, yeah, every season has a new witch. The one for the very first season will be the sandbox witch. Like I said, all of this happens in 2 weeks from now. So train up your characters and get ready, because the sandbox witch is going to be weak to Aqua, Dark, and Void. Is going to be the weaknesses for this witch, and the next character is going to be released in this very video. I'm going to talk in this very video about the next character. It's going to be a dark character, by the way, which may be good against this, maybe not, we'll see. We don't know much about the boss yet. So yeah, that's basically how the co-op battles work. Seems really nice, seems a really fun a way of like having other types of content to do that also gets mixed up with seasonal bonuses, and you actually get something to do with your union members. And like I said, there's going to be more union content in the future. This is not even the union missions. The union missions are still going to happen at some point in the future. This is something completely different that they've just given us because the developers decided that this was fun, and I think it's going to be fun, so we'll see. Now, what else do we have? Well, there's going to be a new story event, because of course there is. And this new story event will be a story event also once again featuring Mitama, our favorite coordinator. Mitama's detective agency file 4 or something like that. And this one is going to be about Alina and Karin, and it's going to be about Ren and Rika. So the roommates are going to be in there. Sadly, no Masara and Kokoro, but you know, that would be too many roommates for a single event. So we're going to have to do 2 pairs of roommates for this one. So yeah, Mitama and these roommates are going to be in this event. Awesome. And it also comes with its own score attack. So we have even more score attacks to do. I think basically every single attack should have every single event should have a score attack, simply because score attacks are fun, and I would assume from a developer standpoint they're not actually that difficult to do, because you get to reuse a boss. And you get to reuse some boss mechanics, but you can still make new boss mechanics. So you can have like a mixture of old mechanics and new mechanics to keep it fresh, while still giving something to do for players. And if you're like a high-end player, you can try to make specific teams for every single boss. So I think that it just makes sense for hopefully every single event from now on having a score attack, because like I said, they're easy to make and they still give a lot of room for new stuff to be happening and to just have something to do that is interesting. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And of course, more rewards. Gotta like more rewards, you know. Next up, yeah, we have also a new main quest. This is basically the main reason why we even had new news in this instance, because the news was specifically about the final chapter release for My Record Arc 1. Although this seems to only be the first half of the final chapter. Like, I don't think this is the final chapter, but like only like the first half of the final chapter, I'm not entirely certain. It seems to be that way at least. So this one, yeah, you can see it's gonna focus a lot about Mifuyu, and I just said we had a dark character. Yeah, it's not Mifuyu though. So Mifuyu will feature quite dominantly in the story, it seems. They even put her on there. That they showed some portraits. She's even in the portraits, like in both of the portraits that they showed for. Yeah, so this is basically gonna be all about Mifuyu, but she's not the character they revealed. But that means that she's all but guaranteed to be the next character after this. So they probably didn't release her just yet because we haven't seen the main story featuring her yet. Although like she has been in main story, but this one seems to focus on her. So since we haven't seen that one yet, they probably didn't want to release her just yet. But Holy Mami we have seen already. So it just makes sense to release Holy Mami first because we have seen her already. But we haven't seen much of Mifuyu yet, so I guess it just makes more sense that way around. So Mifuyu most likely will be happening in about 2 weeks. And since the sandbox witch is weak to dark and void, I assume she's going to be either dark or void. And I think the reason why she's weak to aqua is because we just had the swimsuit event. So of course the swimsuit characters are in there. So she could be either void or dark would be my guess. It would make the most sense. Like even without this sandbox witch weaknesses, I would assume it's either dark or void because it just makes the most sense for her as a character. So yeah, keep that in mind. So yeah, new main quest, which of course means story difficulty, battle difficulty, nightmare difficulty, means new portraits, new levels for your Puella Pictura, everything that has to do with that. New experience, of course, more experience for your player level. That's really important. Nice, all the good stuff. And the actually important stuff, yes, there is a new Kyoku. It's Holy Mami. So we've seen the silhouette for this. And the silhouette for this, I need to give a shout out for Vimo on Discord, because a lot of people have been trying to figure out what the silhouette could be, and Vimo basically hit it directly on the head, like almost exactly, like did a drawing of what the silhouette could look like, and it was like almost 1-to-1 exactly, so that was insane. And yeah, it is indeed Holy Mami. Some people have been saying Ui or Nagisa. There's no way they're coming yet. Oi hasn't even been in the story yet, and they're not going to release a character that hasn't been in the story yet. That's just not what they do. So they only release characters that have been in the story already. So it's not going to be Oi or Nagisa. Like, Oi is going to be way later. Nagisa is going to be happening around Rebellion, which is probably going to be either late September or early October, somewhere around then. I assume is when we're going to see Rebellion story going to be happening. So that's for that. Some people also said Uwasa Tsuruno. I think we're also going to get her. No idea when though. Who knows? So yeah, that's probably what's going to be happening next. But yeah, I'm pretty certain the next character after this is Mifuyu. So Holy Mami, what is the deal with Holy Mami? First off, she's not limited. She's a standard character, meaning that I think at the end of next month or whatever, she's going to be added to the standard pool, and you can just randomly get her at any point from the standard pool. Awesome. That also means that her kit is going to be on the somewhat simpler side, not bad side, right? Because the limited characters are about the same level of power level as like all the other characters, but the kit is going to be a bit more simple, like no crazy mechanics for this, and that's probably for the better. Also interesting is it uses the bonus 1500 point gacha bonus thingy right here. So they have been experimenting a little bit in the past with different ways of doing the gacha. For example, they had the system where they're saying, oh, the actual rate for all 5 stars is now 5% instead of 3%, but the rate up is still only like 0.75%. So you're only going to get more standard characters, but not the rate up character. They did that for 2 gachas and then said, nah. You've also done the thing where you get a free 10 roll at the start of a gacha, and I assume they were doing that and then just gathering some data, seeing how people like this, like sort of testing the waters. Is this something that people want? And people apparently didn't really react that positively to it, at least with their behavior. So I assume it seems that the bonus gauge, a lot more people actually were positive towards in their behavior, like a lot more people seemed to be making use of the system. So it seems they may be keeping this for the future, so we'll see. So yeah, the bonus system once again works the following way. If you've pulled 50 times on this gacha, then you'll get a free 5-star character that is going to be a character from the standard pool. So a standard pool character you're just going to get on top of what you've already gotten at that point. If you then go all the way up to 100 draws, you get another 5-star character, but that 5-star character has an 88% chance to be a standard character, and a 12% chance to actually be the rate up character. Now 12% is really low, like really, really low. And I hope they raise that at some point in the future to at least 25%, but make it at least a 50-50, or actually at 50-50 people would be really mad if they lost that. With 12% people, you're probably not that mad if you lose it. But still, this is kind of weird that it's only like a 12%, and you can only trigger this once. Like if you roll 200 times, you're not getting another 5-star key, another 5-star bonus. You can only get this bonus once. So it's like an incentive to go to 100, and then you have another incentive to go to 200, which is of course the spark. So it's like more incentives, but also more importantly, it's just free stuff. You basically just get free stuff, and you know, free stuff is almost nice, you know. Should you actually roll for her though? Well, let's take a look at her kit. I'm not going to talk too long for her kit because, like I said, it's kind of simple. So she's a dark type attacker, which means that yes, she's the second 5-star character that is of the same combination as Homura. So she's directly competing with Homura. But is she really? Well, let's go through her kit just very quickly. Her special move deals damage to all enemies, so it's AoE, and then does additional 10 random hits. I don't know if this can hit targets that are already dead. Like if the initial hit already kills a target, can it still get hit with random hits? I don't know. I hope that's not the case, because if it actually bounces target only to targets that are still alive, that would be much better. I hope that is the case. I really hope that is the case. Next up, yeah, that's already special by the way, that's all it does. Next up, the skill, all that does is once again damage to all enemies and additional hits, so basically just the special, but you know, very simple, smaller version of it. And then it also gives you a buff that increases damage dealt against weak attributes. Which means already, I can tell you from other bonuses as well, you're going to be playing this character only against targets that are actually weak to dark. You're not going to be playing her against enemies that are not weak to dark. You're probably already not going to do that because on a more difficult content, they have more resistances to elements they're not weak to. But now you're definitely not going to do that because you're also missing all of her damage buffs, because she buffs only damage against weak attributes, so against dark, weak enemies. Then her passive just gives her special move damage for 20%. You can just immediately calculate that into her special in a way. Actually, no, you can't. But it just makes her special stronger. And then on top of that, and this is the important part, you get 5% attack for each enemy on the enemy field. So if it's just one enemy, if you're fighting just a boss, there's only 5% attack, basically nothing. But if there's up to 5 enemies, you get 25% attack passively. That's pretty strong, right? That's actually a really strong buff, but only if there's many enemies. And then you get additional bonuses when an enemy breaks. So when an enemy breaks, you get an additional 30% damage against weak element. Once again, against weak element only. You get 35% speed for 2 turns. And you also gain 10% MP efficiency for 2 turns. All of this to self, by the way, only to her. By the way, this entire, I should have mentioned this, everything here is machine translated because the Twitter still hasn't posted it. The Twitter takes like an entire day, both Japanese and English, to post the kit on the Twitter for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, this is why this might look a bit weird because it's machine translated. But yeah, so once an enemy breaks, you're gonna get a bunch of bonuses, and since you are basically always going to fight her against multiple enemies, that means that as soon as the first enemy breaks, even if it's just a small enemy, you probably will have this buff until all the enemies are dead. Or until at least it's just the boss left alive. So because you can just keep breaking new targets, right? So you can just keep this buff up, so you'll just always have this. So these are really, really strong buffs. But if it's just a single boss, then of course this will trigger only once. Still strong buffs though, still strong buffs. Now what is her support ability? Her support is only active when equipped to dark, meaning that this makes sense, for example, on, basically mostly on Homura, interesting enough. And what this does is it gives additional attack power when there's more enemies, which is just her passive, but just a smaller version of it, 3% per enemy, so you can get a maximum of 15% if there are 5 enemies. You just gain as your support ability. And on top of that, you also gain, similarly to her skill, basically the self buff, where you give yourself more damage to weak attribute, you just get that on your support ability. Damage to weak attributes when combat skills are activated plus 25% for 2 turns. So yeah, you basically get a combination of her passive and of her skill, basically as a support ability, which is really strong. This is one of the strongest support abilities, I would assume, but it's just for dark. And in order to get the most out of it, you have to play it against multiple characters, against multiple enemies. But if you're playing a dark character, a dark attacker, and there are multiple enemies, you would just be playing this Holy Mummy, right? So what other character would be using this instead? Because if there's 5 enemies, why would you use Homoda when now we have this shiny new AoE attacker instead? But still, this is a really powerful effect for Homoda. If you still want to play Homoda and there's multiple enemies, it's really strong for her. Although I'm not quite certain how well it stacks up against Oriko, because Oriko also gives 25% damage to weak attribute. On top of that, however, also gives more damage bonuses if there's more enemies. So it's actually kind of the very similar effect as Oriko. It's like almost the exact same. And Oriko was already one of the strongest support Kyoku, so now we have another one of the strongest support Kyoku. Interesting. Not exactly sure how it stacks up. Wait for the review, I guess. I'm not sure. It's very simple. And then her Ascension 2, since the other Ascensions are always the same as other attackers, it gives you, and this one actually really strong, damage percent by what? Damage plus 10% when there is one or more enemies. So basically, for every single enemy, you get 10% damage. So same as her combat skill and her passive, and her support passive and everything. Just her passive and her support passive. You know, instead of just gaining more attack power against multiple enemies, you now also gain more damage percent against multiple enemies, up to 50%, which is insane. That's an insane amount of damage percent. And of course, on top of that, because somehow that wasn't powerful enough, I don't know why, you gain a 20% action order when enemy breaks, which, like I said, if there's multiple enemies, this will happen a lot. So yeah, that's pretty nice. So her Ascension 2 is kind of busted, like really strong, but once again, specifically only against multiple targets, because if it's just a single target, this doesn't do that much. And then we have her EX, which for once doesn't scale with multiple targets. It's just 25% special move damage, which is decent. You probably use this, but it's only like slightly better than using a standard one, but it's still better. And then the other one is just reduced damage taken when performing a normal attack by 10% for 1 turn. So basically every single time you do a normal attack, you give yourself a 10% damage reduction. Okay, it's like not really that interesting, but it's better than nothing. But yeah, it's like slightly better than a regular crystal is anyway, so you're still gonna use this. And then probably the 25% attack up and 24% weakness damage, I would assume. Gonna use on top of that as well. So yeah, overall she seems very similar to Oriko in a way, but for dark type. And Oriko in AoE scenarios is really good. And that said, her numbers do seem to be a little bit better than Oriko, and I mean that because of her self buffs. Like her self buffs I think are more powerful in Oriko, especially if you have A2. Her self buffs are more powerful, but because all of it is dependent on weak element, you're only going to be playing her against dark enemies. And then against dark enemies, she has to contend with being the rival of Homoda, who has been in the standard pool since release. A lot of people have Homoda. And she's not gonna be in the standard pool until like end of next month. So is she gonna be better than Homoda against 4 or more targets? Probably. Is she gonna be better than like an A2 Homoda against 4 or more targets? Maybe. If you have like an A4 or even an A5 Homoda, I don't think that Holy Mami is gonna be better even against 5 targets, is my assumption. Because Homoda also gets bonuses from enemies getting broken a lot. So like Holy Mami is not the only one who gets that. And on top of that, if it's like 3 enemies or less, I assume Homoda is gonna be better all the time anyway, unless you somehow get like an A5 Holy Mami and an A0 Homoda? Like I don't see how that's gonna be happening. But yeah, for the most part, it's like 3 less enemies. I would assume, like I don't know for sure, but I would assume Homoda is better. And against 4 or more, Holy Mami is better. However, if your Homoda already has high ascensions, she's probably gonna be better in all cases. So, ugh. But then you can at least do her as a support Kyoku, right? And then somehow we still have one last bit of news. It is not Iroha's birthday, but it will be on the 22nd of August. So basically saying on the 22nd of August, we're going to have a special story in the game just to celebrate Iroha's birthday. And that's that. Yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, that's basically all of the news for today. Holy Mami doesn't really look that great, but she doesn't look terrible either. Actually, she looks pretty decent. It's just that she has a really powerful rival who already, for most players, already has multiple ascensions, and that's just really hard to contend with in this economy, right? You're entering an economy that already has a really powerful powerhouse, so that's not very nice. But like I said, in AoE scenarios, yeah, she's gonna be great. So she's not useless or anything. She can be kind of decent, but yeah, she's probably not on the top of many people's list, unless of course you really like Mami in that case. In that case, sure. But like I said, she's standard pool, so even if you're a Mami fan, you don't have enough gems to roll for her, and you might want to watch out for the future, maybe you want Mifuyu or something, She's gonna be in the standard pool end of next month anyway, so I don't think it's that big of a deal if you skip her right now. So yeah, that was that. I hope you guys enjoyed the subscribe button, ring the bell, join the members if you can, and I want to give a shout out to my members as well, which includes Rip Van Winkle and Simpletor as well. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's all guys always hit. I've always said that. Bye!